Hello everybody, my name is Thomas O'Connor. I own and run Mana Organic Farm in Galton Camp and Mana Organic Store in Kerry in Tree with my wife Claire. Though the talk today is on food for our future, it's something that's pretty close to my own heart. But I used to be a publican 15 years ago. I sold my pub and myself and my wife Claire, we bought 25 acres in Galton Camp and we took over Mana Organic Store inside in Tree. This is where you'd usually find me, under the rainbow in Glownagalls, the Valley of the Mad. Our address is Dunor North Glownagalls, which is Hill of Gold Valley of the Mad. I don't know if the place has either made my madness normalised it or it's made me more mad. Either way, this is our farm. It's 25 acres. When we took it over originally, it was a 25-acre sheep farm, and we divided it up into several sections. Down the bottom here, you have our manna field, which we grow salads and veg for the shop. We have a permaculture field above it, about 4.5 acres, and we have apple trees and plum trees and damsons and fruit bushes inside and that. We have a Seed Savers collection of apple trees in there, of 127 apple trees, about 30 different varieties. And we have an agroforestry section planted over in the far corner with terraces, where we got pigs to create the terraces, and then we interplanted with materials that we can coppice and then we can chip. And then we planted 13.5 acres of native woodland at the top. So when we started, one of the reasons we wanted to go back to farming and back to the land is we started understanding what was happening in the environment and started getting very worried about it. We also started learning about the value of our food, both to our own health, to the strength of our community, and to the quality of our environment. So for us, organic mattered. The first thing we did was become certified organic, because there was insecticides, herbicides, fungicides, pesticides, proper rotations, care for the animals, but essentially it meant doing no harm to the earth. Anything with a side at the end of it literally means that they write it on the label for you so you can read it. So we wanted to work closer with nature, so we realised the first thing we had to do was not be putting these chemicals onto the ground. I'm involved with a couple of groups. Transition Kerry started about 15 years ago, about the same time we took over our farm. We met a great bunch of people. We looked into the transition movement. The beauty of the transition movement, it was about developing resilient and sustainable communities. As we looked at it, we had an energy working group, a food working group, a transport working group, but food became a very important group for us to focus on, because we realised that that's actually the core of the community. That's where you can supply food to your community, you can bring your community together around food. And about 10 years ago, we tried to bring a plan together and feeding the kingdom by 2030, where we were looking at how we're going to feed Kerry by 2030, because one of the big things with the transition movement was the idea of peak oil. The recognition we were coming to a point of whether oil was getting expensive or not, it wouldn't be as available, and we realised that the vast majority of our society was driven on oil, particularly around agriculture and food. So we wanted to build resilient, sustainable communities. Then we moved on and we got funding for community and biodiversity workshops, and we worked with a group of communities around Kerry, but we also did a 1.5-year-long series of workshops on transition farming. And the idea there was to bring farmers, didn't matter whether they were conventional or whether they were organic or where they were, but farmers that recognise they need to move away from the position they were in and the dependence, and how did they take those original steps. I'm involved with a group called Talamh Bio. It's set up about 3 years ago, and it's about, Talamh Bio means the living land, and it's about reconnecting land, people and community, and I'm also involved in the Biodynamic Agricultural Association of Ireland. It seems like a lot, but they're all connected to the same thing. They're connected to growing better food and understanding better how we can work with the land. So Talamh Bio is a democratically organised organisation. We're led from the ground up. We started 3 years ago, but we originally came together with the Feeding Ourselves conferences that were held in Cloughjordan every year for the last 12 years. And 3 years ago, a group of the people that were there decided we need an organisation that represented agroecology, that represented on the ground and local food production. Talamh Bio, we have about 300 members, but Talamh Bio is also part of La Campesina. And La Campesina is an international movement that has over 200 million members and 250,000 members in Europe and 200 million Europe members all over the world. So what I'm going to talk about today is food and seed sovereignty, because we talk about food, but a lot of our conversation is around food security, and it's important to change the language. So in Ireland we have food security, but we only have food security because we can borrow the money to buy the inputs or buy the food itself to feed our population. Food sovereignty goes much more than that. It's more than just the calories. It's about ensuring that the food is culturally appropriate to the environment it comes from. It's about ensuring that the knowledge and information, whether that's the seeds or whether that's the inputs, come from the local community, or at least the local community has access to that kind of information. It's about empowering people to make their own choices around food they eat and where it comes from. Talabio and La Campesina, it's a peasants' movement. And sometimes we hear the word peasant and it's a negative connotation in Ireland. But really, a peasant is a strong thing. They're people who work the land and make their living directly from the land. And they're vastly underrepresented considering they make up nearly 70% of the world's food or feed 70% of the population. So really, it's about rebuilding local food systems and a local food framework, moving away from monocultures and moving more into permaculture and into diverse farming systems. As I said earlier, why is it important, peasant farming, is because 70% of the world's population is fed by peasant and local food systems, and only 30% of the world's population is fed by industrial food. But that's not the kind of image we get in Ireland when we talk about food. We're told here we need to get big, we need to get out, or if we would, that we need to feed the world. The only way you can feed the world is by actually starting to feed yourself and your community. Then you're not taking from the rest of the world, and they have the chance to develop and keep their own food systems. Where did the term food sovereignty came from? The food sovereignty came from La Campesina at launched its political vision of food sovereignty at the World Food Summit in 1996. They did this because food sovereignty is the right of people, but they also did it because at the time the World Trade Organization and the International Monetary Fund were starting to get into legislation and policy around food. So the slogan that year was the World Trade Organization out food. So the belief, but we know that when decisions are made from the point of view of a bank or the International Monetary Fund, they're made on purely an economic basis, and food is way too important for those decisions to be made just around economics. So how do we do it? To build food and seed sovereignty, we need to climate-proof our farms and transition away from monocultures and create more permacultures. We need to turn around and move away from specialisation and move into diversification. And that's not saying that we'll get rid of all exports and commodities. What we're saying is that at least 20% of the energy and time that goes into our food system in Ireland should go into local food production. Whereas at the moment there's only one show in town, and that's export of commodities out of the country, and both our farmers and our food system is suffering because of it. We essentially need to transition away from our product industry and mind-dependent agriculture, and natural and biological farming systems. So what is food and seed sovereignty? When it focuses on food for people, it puts people and the need for food at the centre of policies, nationally and internationally as well. It insists the food is more than just a commodity, that it's the right of the community and it is part of the commons. So a lot of the conversation again between food sovereignty and food security is economic, food sovereignty is about protecting the commons. That's the water, the air, the land that belongs to everybody. It values food providers. It supports sustainable livelihoods. It respects the works of all food providers. In Talabio, we're a farming organisation, but we're a land workers organisation. We try to support and work with anybody who's working the land, whether you're keeping bees, whether you're a forester, whether you're a fisher, or you're working in agriculture. We need to localise our food systems. This reduces the distance between food providers and consumers. It rejects dumping and inappropriate food aid around the world, which is skewing the way we grow our food in Ireland. And it resists dependency on remote and unaccountable corporations that are hidden behind layers of no responsibility. In the past, we knew our farmers knew where our food was coming from, so that was the quality assurance, because your neighbour would not give you bad food, or in general they won't, because you had a donation from a trust. Now food comes from systems behind layers, and that trust isn't there anymore. But then because that trust is gone, and the potential of contamination or if something goes wrong being so bad, then we need a whole amount of legislation in order to make sure things don't go too wrong. But then that legislation puts local food producers on the back foot, because they either can't comply, they can't invest as much, or they can't tick all the boxes that are required. It puts control back locally, a place of control in the hands of local food providers, recognises the need to inhabit and share the territories, not just in Ireland, but all across the world. Because we realise now the world is not very small. We don't live in Ireland, and England is over there, and Europe is over there. We're in a small little blue dot floating in space. So what happens in one part of the planet happens to the rest of the planet and to all of us. It rejects privatisation of natural resources. Like I said, we're having a massive theft of the commons. That's our water, our air. Everything that we need to survive is being taken away from us, and an economic value put on it that we need to pay in order to go into it. So we've heard about slavery in the past. What we know is we are economic slaves. To get what we need to survive, we need to go out and make money. To get that money, we need to do jobs that we don't particularly necessarily want to do, or jobs we wouldn't do of our own accord. and we get a token and we can go out and buy what's required. What we need to do is empower people through food sovereignty so they have the seeds themselves. So yes, they might make a bit of money, they might need some money for sending kids to school, but they can actually feed themselves and get the basics of life. It's about building knowledge and skills. It builds on traditional knowledge. We've been told in the past that all old knowledge is no good. The mighty old farmers, they don't know what they're talking about. If it's, are you against science? I remember hearing that so many times. Are you against science, by? And the thing is, the science was very narrow because the science was from the corporations. The science wasn't biological science. It wasn't nature. It wasn't about the soil. It wasn't about the quantity of food or nutrient density. It builds knowledge. It uses research to support and pass this knowledge to future generations. So again, the commons, the knowledge that we use in growing our food and the knowledge we have in our community came from the past. It came from the generations before us that learned all these things and saved the different types of seeds. Whereas now all that is being captured under an economic value and is no longer accessible or available to people the way it used to be. And even when we get education, the education is very narrow. So if you go study agricultural studies, you're going to be studying about chemical industrial agriculture. You might throw in the odd comment about organics or a little bit of nature, but really we need to be totally reversing that. The mainstay of our training needs to be around nature or biological systems. The idea is we work with nature. It maximizes the contributions of ecosystems, improves resilience, and rejects energy-intensive monoculture, industrialization, and destructive models. So to build a food system for a future, we need to take fossil fuels out of its production. I'm going to show a few slides here in a second, and the reason we need to do that is because we need to ensure food and seed independence. We need to at least have the independence with owning the seeds ourselves and knowledge that goes with them. We need to prepare our food supply systems for a convergence of crises, that's peak oil, climate change, and then economic, environmental, and social challenges. There are a lot of issues coming down the road to us, and we can't avoid them. It's gone too far. But what we need to do is build resilience and sustainability inside our communities so we can deal with the shocks that are coming, so we can adapt and change. At the moment, our systems are very fragile and they're very rigid, and the smallest upset of what's happening can throw us into chaos, which we've seen over the last 2 years, time and time again. And essentially, we need to do it because we need to reconnect with our food and our culture and with nature itself. There used to be thousands of cultures, hundreds of thousands of cultures around the world. They were there because they all lived in individual environments. They consumed the food that was in the land, and they were part of that living ecosystem. But over the last couple of centuries, the amount of those different cultures have been eroded, and we've become a monoculture, literally a monoculture. We're all eating the same food, we're living the same lifestyles, watching the same TV. So we're losing our not our individuality, but our collective. We're losing our cultures and the variety of cultures around us, and the diversity, like in our environment, of our cultures and opinions of people brings us to our strengths. Again, why do we need to take fossil fuels out of our food production system? Is because, like I was saying earlier, the industrial food chain uses more than 75% of the world's agricultural land to feed less than 30% of its people. The chain destroys 78 billion tons of topsoil soil annually and cuts down 7.5 million hectares of forest. The peasant food movement, on the other hand, which is the local food system, feeds over 70% of the world's population, with only 25% of the agricultural land. So if we can turn around and shift away from industrial agriculture and help our local and peasant farmers back to the systems they were using, well then we have a more resilient, sustainable system. It's happening across Europe. The European Union is starting to recognise that we need to shift away from the monoculture, industrial and chemical agriculture to more nature-based and locally based systems. Now, the Farm for Fork, when it started, fantastic. A whole load of lobbying from industry and it got diluted down. But it's still a very good document and it's a good direction for us to be heading in. But what we need to ensure is that when that policy and this regulation comes to Ireland, that when our national government interprets it to the benefit of our community and the local food production, not for the AgriVision 2020 or making us more efficient or making sure we put out more commodities. I'm going to have a quick talk about animals just to create a bit of a picture of why it's so important of how we raise our animals and how we farm. So of all the mammals on Earth, 96% are livestock and humans, and only 4% are wild animals. I saw this picture first about, I'd say, 8 or 9 years ago. John Gibbons came down to the IT in Tralee in a Transition Kerry talk, and he showed us this picture. And I was amazed at just the green dots were all that was there of mammals outside of what we, as human beings, in the biomass of the planet, and all the animals we raise, from cattle to pigs to goats. And I said, gee, I was thinking, okay, so that means, it sounds terrible, but that means actually, if we change the way we raise our animals, then we can turn around with a profound effect in the environment. But the pictures, so the picture even gets bigger. So this is the terrestrial, this is the vertebrates, which is the humans in the wild. These are just the anthropods at the other side, which is an equal biomass of what the humans are on the planet. And then you can see in this, the overall biomass of the planet, that humans and livestock are only 6.5%. But the way we farm and the way we treat the environment is affecting every single one of the other organisms that are living on our planet. So it's extremely important in how we, because if you went back pre-colonial time, there was actually more cows and animals and buffaloes on the planet than there is now. The difference is they lived within natural ecosystems and they were managed by traditional systems. Whereas what we have now is consolidation and put in one places and creating pollution. And animals that aren't in the natural environment are generally unhealthy and they cost a huge amount of energy. And also the amount of physical energy that it takes, you can see in the fodder prices, you can see in the price of oil and diesel, the sustainability of how we're raising our animals at the moment. If any of these carpets get pulled under our feet, well then we don't have food production and we don't have an export market. So Solid View has 7 points that we put forward to policymakers on how we see the food system to change from a local and small scale food producers. One is food sovereignty becoming the cornerstone, and there's a food sovereignty proclamation that we follow and as part of La Campesina. It's about following sustainable development goals, farm-to-fork strategy, and farming for nature. It's about stimulating and supporting local production. It's about an agrochemical-free Ireland. Ireland could be a world leader in organic and agrochemical-free food production because, in fact, that's actually what we tell most of the world we are. That we're a green country and we produce the best nature, naturally grass-grown food. But when you dig down through the layers, that's not true. Eventually, that's going to be found out and we lose our export markets. We need a basic income for all full-time farmers that are engaged in agroecological and high nature farming. Because they're at a disadvantage. It takes more time, it takes more energy, it takes more costs, and they don't have the investments, and it takes more labour in order to produce food locally and produce it in a natural system. We need access to land for new farmers. We have an ageing generation of farmers. We have a new generation of people coming out, food growers, that want to engage with the environment, want to engage with nature. They want to grow food, but they can't get access to land, they can't get access to money. We need a new forestry policy for biodiversity, not profit. Our trees should be integrated into our farming systems. We need polyculture rather than monoculture. The idea, it's almost schizophrenic that we have our trees in one corner and we have our green grass on the other. We need to reintegrate both of them together so we have a more sustainable, resilient system. And again, it's about farm diversification and a move away from intensification. Talbot View has a local food policy. You can find it on our website, and it's about the production, consumption of food in short supply chains, predominantly small-scale growers. Produce from these farms can get to customers very quickly. But if you go on to our website, you can find out more details about our local food policy. What we're trying to do is we have several working groups and we're trying to develop policies that come from the ground of people working locally and then bring them up to legislation and try and change something. So, Lisa, thank you for your pictures. I love these pictures. So, this is what's happening at the moment. We have people that are feeling overwhelmed. We have farmers growing up not knowing what the future for their kids are going to be on the farm. And essentially, like a century ago, we were all farmers, but now we've become disconnected. If you went back a century ago, there was nobody inside in the city or town that at some stage didn't have a connection with the country, so they didn't understand it. Now we have enough population that's separated. So what we need examples and leadership of how it can be done differently. So what we need to do is return to nature and natural food production systems, and we need to remember that resilience is fertile. And how do we do that? We look at the soil. We live in a fantastic age. So they were saying, are you against science? I'm all for science. I mean, for honest, open citizen science, one that teaches people the real information. And the science that's out there around our soil, our ecological, biological systems, it's unbelievable. I got a microscope there last year at the Talavero EIP. You think the world is around you, something. When you start looking through the microscope and seeing everything that's inside the ground. But not only that, when you see the difference in how we treat our land in a conventional system, or if you go into a woodland, or you go into an organic or a regenerative system, well then you can see a huge difference in the biology. And they say we need to be sustainable. It's like efficiency, one of these words has been used. But we can't be sustainable anymore because we can't sustain what we're doing. We can't sustain the position we're in. So this is where agroecology and regenerative agriculture is coming from. And like I said, there's no point being at home worried about the polar bears and the ice melting. We need to take action. We need to use our heads, take in all the information we can learn. We need to filter it through our hearts so we make an honest decision on it. And then we need to use our hands to build physical projects on the ground. And the only thing really that limits us is our imagination. So, thank you very much.